Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at some more aircraft which have been passed to the devs for May of 2025. There's some really cool ones here and I'm super happy to be having a look at them. Some of them have been passed in the past, so I'm not going to cover them too much because we've talked about them previously, but other ones haven't, and I think they have some really cool and interesting stories. And as always, I would love to see all of these in the game at some point. The cool thing about the pass to the devs is it shows how many vehicles we are still missing when it comes to War Thunder and how much opportunity there is in the future. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get started. The first vehicle is for America, and it is the Republic XP-72. This is a vehicle we have covered in the past, so I'm not going to go over it too much, but basically this is the ultimate version of the P-47. It was a prototype that was created near the end of the war, which has a much different engine. It has the 3,450 horsepower R4360 Wasp Major, and a few other modifications that elevated the performance of the plane to one of the best propellers to ever exist. Some modifications include a cooling fan, removal of the turbo supercharger in favor of a huge two-stage supercharger, and also a 6-blade contra-rotating propeller. The vehicle also had the 50 cals, which is pretty standard for the American vehicles. It had 6 of them, with 267 rounds in each of them, and can also carry some 500 or 1,000-pound bombs or even external fuel tanks. This vehicle had a ridiculous amount of power in its engine and was able to go incredibly fast, which is really cool to see. Basically, at sea level, it could go 651 kilometers per hour, and then at 25,000 feet, 788 kilometers per hour, which is incredibly impressive for 1944 propeller aircraft. The problem that this one had is many of the same problems that other prototypes had by the end of the war. The jet age was beginning, and they were kind of left in the past. For Britain, we have the North American Mustang Mk.1 40mm. Basically, in 1941, the first Mustangs began making their way into RAF service, but it didn't jump straight into dogfighting operations. Armed with 4 7.7mm and 2 12.7mm machine guns, but lacking at power at altitudes where combat occurred over Europe, the Mustang was more used for reconnaissance and also low-level strike aircraft duties in the RAF service, something it excelled at due to its high speed and good performance at sea level, outrunning every Axis fighter at the time. This was also at the same time that the RAF began using new weapons in North Africa, the 40mm Vickers S cannon on aircraft. Designed to tear open fuel tanks and cripple even the newer Panzer III and IV tanks making their way onto the battlefield. They were initially mounted on Hurricanes, dubbed the Mark II-D, which was later improved to the Mark IV, and whilst formidable, it was lacking in performance and speed, making it vulnerable to enemy aircraft and also AA fire alike. This is where the AM-106 comes in. It was one of several Mustangs dedicated to stores testing, experimenting with extra fuel tanks, zero-length rocket launchers, and, most importantly, 40mm cannons. Whilst on paper, the Mustang was ideal for the role, having far greater performance than the Hurricane. Unfortunately, the RAF never adopted them into any Mustang squadron, leaving the AM-106 as the sole Mustang armed with the cannons. For Japan, we have another Vampire, the de Havilland DH-115 Vampire T-55. In 1954, the newly formed JASDF was looking for modern training aircraft in order to accept them into service or use them to develop its own modern training aircraft. In order to test the design, in 1955, Japan purchased one British trainer de Havilland DH-115 Vampire T-55. This aircraft differed from American training aircraft, for example the T-33A, in that the crew sat next to each other, not in tandem. The British, hoping to sell more T-55s in the future, modified the machine to encourage the Japanese more, and in November 1955, the T-55 aircraft was delivered to Japan, where it received the designation 63-5571, and then awaited testing. Tests began in March of 1956 and lasted until the end of April. During the tests, it was found that the de Havilland DH-115 Vampire was a good training aircraft, but Japanese planes were bought from the US, where there was a different crew layout, which makes training a bit more difficult. Therefore, the purchase of more T-55 aircraft from Britain was abandoned. Then the aircraft served training tasks until 1960, and in 1960 was withdrawn from active service and assigned to a more interesting task. Due to its futuristic appearance, the JASDF decided to use the T-55 as a demonstration aircraft to encourage people to join the JASDF. The aircraft served for this purpose in the 1960s. Then for a period of time, it went to the first JASDF technical school in Hamamatsu, where it served as an instructional aircraft. And in the 1970s, the aircraft again served as an attraction at events held at the Hamamatsu base, and in March 2000, the aircraft was then placed in the JASDF Air Park in Hamamatsu as an exhibit due to its historical value. It's still there today. The de Havilland DH-115 Vampire T-55, even though it's a trainer, was still armed with 4 Hispano Mark V 20mm cannons, 150 rounds per gun, but only if it had one pilot. If the aircraft flew with 2 pilots, the armament was reduced to 2 20mm Hispano Mark Vs. The aircraft could also carry 2 500-pound bombs in place of the suspended fuel tanks, and in addition, the aircraft could also be armed with 8 RP-3 missiles under the wings. For China, we have the King 6, which you may already be familiar with. The BE-6, a water reconnaissance bomber, was acquired by China from the Soviet Union in the early 1950s. Substantial modifications were carried out after 1970, resulting in the aircraft being renamed as the King 6, which served as a waterborne anti-submarine patrol aircraft. The Beriev Design Bureau initiated the design of the BE-6 bomber in 1946, with its maiden flight taking place in February of 1949. It entered mass production in 1950, but was discontinued in 1955, with a total of 150 aircraft being manufactured. The BE-6 was utilized for long-range reconnaissance and also anti-shipping operations at sea. Equipped with specialized bombs, it was capable of locating and neutralizing enemy submarines within a significant combat radius. The aircraft had the ability to fly at extremely low altitudes, maintaining a height of 10 to 15 meters above the sea for extended periods, and it served in the Soviet Navy for a duration of 20 years. In 1952, during the spring season, Mao Zedong gave his approval for the establishment of the Chinese People's Liberation Army Naval Aviation Force. As part of this initiative, seaplanes were imported from the Soviet Union. A naval delegation was sent to the Soviet Union for negotiations, and in October 1955, 6 BE-6 seaplanes were flown from the Soviet Union to Qingdao in China. These seaplanes were then equipped with naval aviation units. The first successful flight of the modified BE-6 took place on the 9th of June 1970. A total of 4 aircraft were modified for this purpose. The BE-6's engines were replaced with more powerful ones, and additional equipment such as anti-submarine magnetic anomaly detection and also acoustic buoys were installed to enhance its submarine search and attack capabilities. Changes were made to the design of the engine nacelle and fuselage tail, and the tail turret and bulletproof equipment were removed. On one model, the fuselage tail was extended by 6 meters and equipped with a magnetic probe rod and a non-directional sonar buoy delivery mechanism, with a total of 63 buoys. Corresponding modifications were also made to the onboard systems, with a TF-16 turbine generator replacing the original M10B generator. The fuel system, oil system, and engine control system underwent changes as well. Additionally, ventilation, cooling, and fire extinguishing systems, as well as propeller and wing leading edge anti-icing systems, were added. They remained in service until the 1990s, providing enhanced load and capacity due to the additional power. A specific instance of this can be found today at the Chinese Aviation Museum in Beijing. The armament that this vehicle was able to carry was one 23mm NR23 cannon in the nose turret. It also had a one dual-mounted 23mm NR23 in a dorsal turret, two 1,000 kilo torpedoes, or 8 mines, or 500 to 4,000 kilos of bombs. But when it comes to the bombs, the sources are kind of conflicting. Depending on who you know or who you look at, they will say different numbers. So who knows at the end of the day. That's the aircraft that we're looking at today. Hopefully you enjoyed them all. Let me know what you would like to see in War Thunder. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Warthunder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.